Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. Now we're going to take a look at these stories that have been making headlines for a while, most of them at least, and see what their significance and how they have been covered by the Kenyan press. And to kick us off, our top story with the visit by the United States, or to the United States by the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyattas. I'd like to figure out what its significance to Kenya and the United States is, especially given that Kenya is now holding that rotational position in the United States. I'll start with you, Honorable Tandaza. What do you make of the visit of Uhuru Kenyattas to the United States, and why is it of importance, the fact that he's the first African president to be hosted by Joe Biden?
Thank you, our esteemed viewers. Yes?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
State visits, yes, good. For state visits, as enshrined in our laws, these are meant to actually cement our relationship with the host countries and also enhance bilateral ties. And of importance is the trade that comes with it, the investment that comes with it. It is usual for any visiting head of state, once he visits a country outside, to meet the business community, because that is where real relationships can be brought about. And especially for a country like ours, which needs a lot of investors from outside, then it becomes very important that up to the level of the head of state, visiting any other country, not just America, but any other country, to me, those would be the main ingredients. That would be the importance of that visit, to, of course, cement bilateral ties, trade ties, and, of course, market Kenya abroad. You realize that Kenya essentially was a tourist country. We were expecting, we've been relying on our foreign exchange, on the tourism market. So at that level, a head of state is expected also to portray the potential of the country to attract investment, to attract tourists to the country, and therefore enhancing the economy of the country. About him being the first president, African president, to visit Joe Biden, I think that is also an honor. Of course, I believe the delegation, because it is not only the president who visits, the delegation accompanying him, had made all the prior arrangement to take advantage of that situation. Remember, America is a superpower. It's one of the biggest economies in this world. So you expect, once you are given that opportunity, especially to sit with the CEO of that other country, the president of that country, then you should be able to articulate and, of course, take the advantage of the situation to benefit your country. That was one of the benefits of him. So, and I believe even the American president and his country at large had seen the reason or the importance why our president, our country, should be accorded that opportunity to be the first African country to have a one-on-one with the president of the strongest country, the strongest economy, the superpower of this world. So, of course, I'm quite sure with due cause we should be able to know what exactly was penned down, what exactly Joe Biden himself as the president promised this country, and not only promised, but actually said or put into pen and paper on what he is going to do for this country. But for me, at the end of it all, we should not be relying on what aid or what can be done for this country. I'm looking at a situation whereby the president of this country at one time will be meeting with other presidents, including the president of America, and discuss at the level as equals in terms of their economies, in terms of securities, a win-win situation. Otherwise, for the current situation, we find that the superpowers more or less tell us what to do, or they tell us what to do. They basically look at us as beggars, maybe people to be helped, to be given something, tokenism. But I think as the country moves forward, that level should reach where our president we should be able to talk to the other presidents or other countries on one-to-one, not in terms of senior and one senior and the other one subordinate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tandazam. That's a very interesting take on that. I'd like to know, we also have here in studio Professor Noah Midamba, who's a defense and foreign policy expert. I'd like to know from him what it means for Kenya to be in that rotational position. Does it have to do with anything? Does that have anything to do with the fact that we are the first country, African country, with which the United States is having a sit down with? And at the same time, for Kenya, what does this mean for the future of US-Kenya relations? Professor?
Trick, thanks for having me in your wide, elaborate studio. I'm very pleased to be here. This engagement between the two presidents, President Kenyatta and President Biden, is very significant for our country. Kenya need to understand that we are the largest economy in Africa south of the equator right now. And we are the sixth largest economy in the continent of Africa. We have the largest military system in East Africa. In other words, Kenya is the most dominant country in East Africa. Yes. For significant period of time, and I'm talking as American Kenya, because I spent 30 years in the United States. And I study American system, I understand what they are, the future implication for America and also for Kenya. From Clinton administration to now Biden administration, the American system has been trying to engage Kenya in a fruitful relationship rather than a one-sided kind of thing, and then be able to propel certain African countries so that they become example for the rest of Africa in terms of future development of Africa.
Yes.
Given the kind of geostrategic relationship around the world, this is very, very significant. For some time now, Kenya has been wanting to be much more closer to the United States in terms of trade and the future geopolitical relationship as we move forward.
Yes.
And this is real opening for several reasons. One is the Undersecretary for African Affairs, Ambassador Godek, spent several years in Kenya and loved Kenya. The former President of the United States, Barack Obama, has roots in Kenya. There is a significant trade going on between Kenya and the United States. And therefore, what we need to do is to establish a relationship that then will propel us in the same level like South Korea, Taiwan, and so those eastern countries. But Kenya has to manage it. We have to put the best foot forward. And the demonstration today is that Kenya is the first country to be called to the White House.
Absolutely.
That is very significant.
It's very significant.
Thanks.
And still on that, I'd like to know, in your opinion, because over the past few years, Kenya has been ramping up and tightening its relations with the East and China, to be specific, and at the same time now they are also keeping up with their relationship with the United States. This must be quite the balancing act, because you do know the relations between US and China are a bit tense at the moment.
Yes, it's quite a balanced act.
Yes.
But we have what we call a three-polar pool right now. During the Cold War, we have a bipolar pool, and now it's a triple-polar pool. All of a sudden, China has risen up.
Yes. And
China is moving up in a very accelerated pace until until Trump administration came in and said, wait a minute, we have to check on on China expansionist. And Trump set up a policy which is basically followed by Biden right now.
Okay.
In order to check Chinese expansionists in the Far East, and then they're coming to Africa, and they're also going to Europe.
Right.
Now, what is going to happen here is Kenya's significant advantage.
Yeah.
We can benefit from China, as we're doing right now, by having a balanced act, but have the upper level in terms of our traditional relationship with the West,
right,
which work very, very close with United States and also with United Kingdom. And then balance it out such that we are not seen as a one-sided, and then we also don't get overshadowed by the Chinese reapproachment.
Absolutely.
Because it is deadly when you come to accumulated trade deficit and everything. And that's what we have to watch very carefully.
Indeed. Now, I'd like Honorable Tandaza to give us his opinion on the fact that the Pandora paper leaks happened while the president was outside the country, and he was, his name was adversely mentioned in the reports that have been made by local and international media. Politically speaking, what do you think this means for him? Is it, he has made comments about it and said he will go deeper when he is back, but of course it would be better if he were in the country and able to respond quite swiftly, as this is not good for publicity. What do you make of that?
Well, him being outside or inside from where I sit will not make a difference, because the world now is a global village. You can literally do anything from any part of this world, be it communication, be it signing papers, be it... You literally can do all what you would want to do. You can communicate all what you would want to communicate. So for him or for us to imagine that probably there would have been a different response if he was in the country, I don't think that should be the case now with the kind of technology that we have. For the Pandora Papers to come out at this time, when we are talking about succession politics coming 2022, which is less than a year from now, I will look at it from both sides, that, well, it is important that Kenyans as a whole know who could be sabotaging the country if there is some illicit money outside there, because that is sabotage, that is criminal. But remember, legally, of course, when due process is followed, even you can open an account outside this country. You can do business out of this country legally. You can register a company legally, just as foreigners do register companies here, do business, either keep their money here or take it back. It is a two-way process. But to me, what I know from previous such exposés, nothing will come out of it. Even when he comes back, even if he were to be here, nothing will come out. Remember, we've been dealing with known cases, and I would name the Okemo and the James Gishuru, the money which was out there, which they even refused to go when they were told, can you come and explain, here is your money. They were to go to court and say, no, we don't want to go there, proving that that was definitely illicit money. That was money obtained through corrupt practices. But what has happened over the years? Nothing. We've had the UK offering themselves to give information to our investigative agencies within the country so that they can recover those monies which are out there. But nothing happens. So for us, I think we should be content with the situation that we find ourselves in. It is not the best situation. Corruption, for sure. I believe most of the monies out of the country were not obtained through legal channels, but well, we have to live with it, because even when you are dealing with a case within the country, probably outside could be complex, but there are obvious cases within the country. The obvious cases where, one, it's obvious that from the salary that one is getting cannot have accumulated all the money, all the properties within that period. But nothing happens. The cases take forever to be concluded. And the worst bit, trick, is when it is concluded, it is even a trade-off. Yeah, one is convicted having stolen in excess of 100 million and is given a fine of 10 million. So it is even encouraged, it is good business, it pays in Kenya to even obtain money through corrupt processes. And now that you are approaching the electioneering period, it's unfortunate. I have also to touch on the ordinary Kenyan. It does, up to now, the voter or the Kenyan has not seen the importance of having clean leaders who have a track record of having worked and gained their property. In any case, they would even celebrate if somebody is convicted of having participated in corruption. No wonder those with mega corruptions, whenever they go for an elective post, they win with a very wide margin. So you can imagine the difference of what we should be, where we should be in matters corruption, and even where the ordinary Kenyan is in matters corruption. So it's a sad situation up to that extent.
It is. When it comes to corruption, it is indeed quite sad in what's happening in this country. Now, well, because of the president's prominence and the prominence of his family, of course he would be on the front pages when it comes to these Pandora leaks, however little he has to do with the corruption or however little is proven in the leaks and the documents. So what do you make of the situation and the position it puts the president having to explain that, yes, this came out, but you have to realize that there was no proof in these papers that these were proceeds of corruption. It's not ideal for a head of state.
Well, I agree with the previous speaker, what Kasim is saying. What you do with your money, your hard-earned money, is your own business.
True.
You can choose to take it to Bahamas or wherever, where you are going to leverage, getting more interest rate and less tax. That's your business. But when it comes to this money came out of the National Treasury, came out of our own archive, then we have issue. Yes. The question we need to understand is that Kenya has been embroiled in corruption and also ethnic issues, such that we are not able to rise above the water to deal with geopolitical issue in our sphere of influence. I indicated earlier that we are the dominant militarily and also dominant economically in eastern part of Africa. Yes. And we are high-ranking in Africa as a whole. Now that is enough ability to give us opportunity to really explore the rest of the world for our own good. And so I think what the president needs to come back and say to Kenya is, look at me, okay? Look at him from the time that he became president to the time that he's here. Has he taken anything out of public archive? Because what relates to his family is a different matters altogether. And so he needs to distance himself from that and look at the role that he has played. And I'm very pleased with how vocal he's been in this issue. The construction that is taking place right now is taking place at a cost, whereas the previous situation, we have a double, triple cost of the construction. And things are moving in the right direction. So you just need to assure Kenya that, look, I have played a very clean role. I'm your president now, and this is what I've done, and this is what I believe in. That's what you need to do. Example, Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore and also South Korea.
Okay. All right. Now, far from that, I'd like you to also, you're talking about the dominance of Kenya militarily and economically in the region. It brings to mind the issue, the ongoing issue, another subject that has come up while he was abroad, the Kenya-Somalia maritime dispute. And there's also talk of Kenya not necessarily leaving, AMISOM not necessarily leaving Somalia as soon as it was thought to happen. What's your take on that and how it's unfolding?
Thank you, Trick, for bringing that issue. And let me begin from where I left, which is we have the ability to really project our power in our sphere of influence in East Africa and also in Africa. But because of the domestic issues, which is corruption and also ethnic politics. We have been consuming most of our time and energy on that and not rise above to project the power. What happened is we reach a point where we fumble, use American football analogy. We fumbled in 90th yard line when we were supposed to post the goal.
Yes.
Because we didn't put our best foot forward and we didn't take this issue very seriously. And therefore, events overcome our ability to manage it to conclusion. Now, let me talk about the big picture first, and then we get into the issues of where we are right now.
Yes.
The big picture is United Nations. What is the focus of United Nations in this millennium? Number one is threat from poverty, threat from conflict between states, threat from violence and massive human rights abuse, threat from terrorism, threat from organized crime, and threat from proliferation of weapons, particular weapon of mass destruction. Now, when you list all those kind of things, you hear very clearly where this thing is taking us.
Yes.
What I'm asking, and some of my very good friends has called me and said, Prof, what are we waiting for? We are the most powerful nation in Eastern Africa. We can go and march in Mogadishu and teach them Malaysia. That is wrong. We need to step back because we fumbled.
Yes.
Now, we are in a weakened position now than where we were yesterday. And therefore, we need to regroup and then begin now, because my point is this issue belongs to Africa. This issue is a political issue. It's not a court issue.
For sure.
It's not criminal, where you are judged wrong and, charged and all that. The ICJ has not have a good track record since 1945 of any conviction, and also, and therefore, Kenya has made its position very clear. We're no longer part of ICJ, and therefore we cannot accept the OCJ, judgment.
Yes.
But nevertheless, we are part of the entire global picture. We must be seen as respecting international law.
For sure.
So it is important now to go back to the drawing board, utilize all the resources we have within IGAT, within OAU, and also at the UN, and this is where the US will be extremely helpful. And then be able to engage quietly, be able to engage Somalia and say, listen, we can solve this thing bilaterally or multilaterally, and it is the best interest of Somalia and the best interest of Kenya.
Absolutely. Now, Honorable Tandaza, you've heard from Professor what he said about how this is a political problem and probably deserves a political solution as opposed to marching into Mogadishu or chest stamping and what have you. What do you make of that situation as it unfolded at the ICJ? Kenya's stance, Somalia's stance, and at the same time, counterterrorism is another issue that Kenya and the US actually collaborate on, and of course, this is something that is still ongoing even today. What do you expect to come out of that visit in that aspect?
Well, the president, I hope, will take the opportunity to articulate the position about the role with the US president, given that he's a superpower. And I'm picking it from the point that all conflicts in Africa, and I mean all, with no exception, as a result of the multinationals, of the superpowers, competing for the resources of the Africans. It could be DRC, it could be Somalia, it could be anywhere, but it normally starts by, it could be Nigeria, Boko, all these things. If you look at them deeply, you will find that it's not the tribes, it is not the African countries themselves, but it starts from the multinationals, from the superpowers, those big countries, those big economies that instigate these conflicts. Looking at this issue of the boundary between Somalia and Kenya, to me, it should be a non-issue. It should have been a non-issue if it were not for the taunted gas and those minerals within that particular block. Tanzania and its neighbors down south, they have no problem. The boundary is parallel. Kenya and Tanzania, no problem. The boundary is parallel. Now, how can it that all of a sudden the boundary between Kenya and Tanzania cannot be parallel, but it has to follow the point of entry into the ocean? This, I don't think, is actually a Kenyan and Somalia problem. It's a multinational problem, and that is the way it has been all through. To me, there was no basis of even appearing at the ICJ on such a matter. It is unfortunate that the Attorney General, the chief advisor to the government initially, thought it wise to make an appearance at the ICJ and then pull out. The argument now, if we are to go to the legal argument, I'm not a lawyer, I have to put a disclaimer, but a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrator, I'm a qualified arbitrator. You cannot enter, make an appearance, attempt to reply to the issues on the table, and then later on say, I'm not going to proceed because the court lacks jurisdiction. In any case, if it was a matter of jurisdiction, it is normally the first thing that has to be determined. But to the extent that we were asking for more time and whatever, that issue cannot be there, and any reason for us to say we are not going to abide by the judgment of the ICJ. But to me, it should have been very clear right from the beginning that we cannot agree our boundaries, or the ICJ is not in a position to show neighboring countries, peaceful coexisting countries, their boundary, save for the fact that there are some other interests in terms of the gas and the minerals in that block. Well, up to where we are, war is not an option. It will disrupt the lives of Kenyans. Probably the Somalians have no problem. They are somehow used to that situation. But for us here in Kenya, we are a very peaceful country. We have our own challenges that we are surviving, trying to get to selling our potatoes, selling our coconuts, selling our cassavas. I don't think we have time for a full-time war with our neighbor, Somalia. Yeah.
Absolutely, you are right. And speaking
of... for that matter, I'm hoping the superpowers, those with the interests in that block, and I can tell you it's not about Kenya and Somalia, it's about the multinationals.
For sure.
They should also realize that this is not the right time to push the two countries into conflict. Mm-hmm. It's going to disrupt the lives, it's going to disrupt our economies, and you know the moment you're in war, it's so difficult to go back. My colleague has been talking about the Kenya being the largest economy. It's true. But you can see it's because we've also enjoyed the relative peace compared to our neighbors, especially north and west. So to me, peace is paramount important. I believe the president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyattas, will take the diplomacy to the next level, knowing where the genesis is. It's not Kenya and Somalia, it's the multinationals. And somehow sense prevails that we coexist.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about reminds me of the situation with South Sudan and their black gold and how it degenerated very fast into the worst conflict we have had in the region. Now, it's been 10 years since of Operation Linda Nchi. Do you think we have progressed fast enough and also in achieving what we set out to achieve in Somalia?
Well, the significant progress, yes. Mm-hmm. We achieved what we intend to achieve? No. Okay. Somalia's situation is very complex, in the sense that we cannot think about a timetable. In war, it is always very, very clear, according to General Powell. You need to have your exit strategy. Now, the issue for Kenya is we're like Siamese twins. Mm-hmm. We're connected with intertwined with Somalia. Somalia There is who is who in Somalia is here in Kenya.
Yes.
They're Kenyan citizen, or they're trading, or their property here. And therefore, we are not just going to cut off and say we can no longer be in Somalia.
Yes.
What we need is to have a peaceful, prosperous Somalia as well as Kenya. And that will ensure our stability. So now, let's go back to the issues at hand. What are we talking about? We're talking about the issue of the power of sovereignty, the power of the state over its national integrity.
Yeah.
We're talking about the future relationship between Somalia, where we are right now, to where we are going in the future. And lastly, we're talking about the undersea reaches, which is now...
We all seem to be wanting. And as Honorable Tanzala says, it seems like even other nationals have an interest there.
Correct. So what is the sense of agency here? Number one, ICJ literally had no business. And I'm talking about that as not only as a true patriot of Kenya, but of Africa. Have no business engaging in judgment before we exhausted all the African.
But then Somalia went there.
Well, it doesn't matter when they went there. ICJ could have kicked that case back to AU and say, now solve it. Among yourselves, exhaust all that.
Right.
Kenya fumbled. There is no question about that. We didn't put our best foot forward. We were not serious as we need to be in managing that border issue. As we have done with Mugingo and as we've done with Southern Sudan.
Yes.
We get engaged and then sort of relax. And so we need to know, we need to understand as a country that these issues cannot be passed to the future generation. We need to iron them out.
Ourselves.
Now, before in the early 1900, the extent of the sea claimed by a country was called cannon fire. You fire cannon, and where it ends, that is your territory.
Right, absolutely.
Now we have 200 nautical miles. Next, we are going to have 400 nautical miles. If we go with the Somalia as they propose, that means Kenya is going to be cut off from access to the Indian Ocean in the future.
It will be landlocked.
Kenya must not accept that. There should be a very clear demarcation, clear line. That's number one. Number two, this is a historical issue. Africa was demarcated by the colonial power. In the early 60s, the African decided not to change those because they will create a lot of conflict in Africa. Kenya's negotiated a parallel line with Tanzania. And then, so when you divert that line, then you are going to divert Mozambique line, then you are going to divert South African line, and then it's a ripple effect around Africa. The implication is very serious.
For sure.
And therefore, it's not a no and yes answer, but it's a point to really sit back, think, and reflect on the issue at stake and our future relations.
So at this point, basically, ideally, we would both concede that why we are feuding is because of the minerals, and therefore find a solution, politically speaking, that actually helps us get a win-win situation. But then we've had the tough stance that Kenya took. We also had the Somalians also coming out through their president in a very tough stance. Do you think that's going to be a possibility?
Well, taking a tough public stand, there is nothing wrong with that. You know, when animals fight, they also take a stand. One looks bigger than the other one. There is no question about it. So Famajo need to take a tough stand for his political interest, domestic political interest, that he is a leader, he can stand to do that. The question is, who is behind this thing? Who is pushing the state of Somalia, and who is financing it? Okay. And from the Kenya standpoint and all the analysis, we know there is a lot of interest, their individual interest, their country interest that is pulling them. Kenya fumbled to begin with, so we must accept that. But it's not lost, because Kenya now has the ability to be very serious and then re-engage Somalia so that we can come up with a workable solution for this thing. And I have a four-point solution to this.
Go ahead.
Number one, the two states, Kenya and Somalia, should respect the colonial demarcation. Okay, no change on that like the rest of Africa has done. Number two, any attempt to claim or change the goalpost will compromise our peaceful and stability for the entire continent of Africa. Number three, both countries should immediately invite IGAD, United Nations, and under the OU umbrella to begin a very serious discussion toward a solution, acceptable solution. Somalia should refrain from chest thumping, and Kenya must never take a one stand, but make sure that we put the best foot forward in terms of experienced foreign policy people, foreign policy and military people that will engage Somalia, and we will not get out of the room until a solution is found.
Okay, right. Honorable Tandaza, I'd like your take on the situation with the maritime disputes, your reaction to what Prof has said, and at the same time, the 10 years of Operation Linda Nchi. Do you think we have done justice to all that time, or what we set out to achieve when we went into Somalia?
On the first issue of the maritime border, I also would want to look at the way Kenya handles its international cases once they're out there. It is also sad that as a country, we've never won any international matter out there, be it on a situation like this, a country to a country, be it on business matters, be it on contractual terms. The AG's office just doesn't seem to know what it should do. But from where I sit as a politician and as a Kenyan who knows our country, can we please, even from those offices, stop cutting deals on serious issues? Because I think this is where we lose, you see, when it comes to cutting deals. The same issue of seeing how an individual benefits out of a very serious situation, a very grave situation, which would affect the lives of the citizenry and put the whole economy down. I think that is where we are failing. On the same issue, I think our president should engage the people behind that push for the boundary change. To me, that is where the elephant in the room is. I don't think Somalia as a country or Farmajo as a person has a problem, but I think it is those behind, those who want those minerals, those who want the natural gas down there. I think it's high time those people also engaged. Now, coming down to the issue of the Linda Nchi of Operation Tricks.
Yes.
How did we get there in the first place? We didn't have a lot of option from where I sit. Remember, it is the terrorists who started coming and basically attacking Kenya from the seas. So any responsible government will want to secure its borders, will want to take care of the people. And with AU having come in to actually more or less take the burden away. Remember, the Kenyan troops which are in Somalia, they are not there just as Kenyan troops. They are there under the command of the AU. They are Ugandan troops there, they are Burundian troops there, and other troops from the African continent under the command of the AU. So this is a continental, it's a regional problem, it's a continental problem, and the AU is certainly getting some funding from UN and other agencies. It's an international problem. And so far, so good. We cannot just take it for granted the peace that we've had Of course, we still have attacks in the northeastern region, intermittent attacks in Mandera, Wajir, and such places. But to the extent that they had come to the capital, that was worrying, of course, to a larger scale.
Yes.
So we have to take credit where it is due for the interventions that the country took. For how long it can continue, it would have been my wish that it should have been a short engagement. The forces which are there, the troops which are there, able to neutralize the Al-Shabaab from within there, not them coming to our country. And finally, getting our troops back. It has been draining. Of course, even the people in Somalia, our soldiers in Somalia, I don't think that is the best place they would have wanted to be continuously. So I hope with the peace that we are having, it is going to be taken to the next level and finally have our troops back. But there is no alternative to securing our borders. The president saw through our constitution to take care of us. And so far, he has demonstrated that he can. And even after the next general election, if we are threatened, whoever will be there, it is my prayer that he will take the same stance to make sure that our borders are safe.
Yeah.
Because it's after we enjoy our security, then we can tackle the other challenges that we have. We are now talking about the economy. All the discussion is about the economy. But remember, we're able to talk about the economy when there is peace. So peace comes first, and peace should prevail in this country.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Tandaza. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, we shall come back with more discussions, particularly on the situation between Kenya and Somalia and that visit the president is engaged in the United States. He had the first opportunity as an African leader to meet Joe Biden and have a sit down. And of course, they discussed various issues where